So basically, this is what's going on, that when people get it first introduced to meditation, there's only a few things to learn to get started. And yet the Western mind, we want more and more and more and more, so that our intellectual capabilities far exceeds our um, ability to perform. An example of that is when the kid hears a piece of music on the radio, and he's a music student, so now he wants to play that piece that he heard on the radio. This is exactly the way that Dhamma works, that we hear the Dhamma on the radio and then we want to go practice it, but or play that music, but we don't have the skills to do that. And so with the normal way, especially with the Goenka method, that the way that they operate is by giving the students only a little bit. That they don't give them the whole show, they give them enough to practice. And basically, anapanasati, or as Goenka calls it, anapana, he only talks about that there's the first three steps, in the sense of the third step being experiencing the body. And so most of the retreat, the students will experience starting from the top of the head and working down and around to make sure that they're waking up the body and all of that. And this is a really, really good exercise. It's really good because it by having the mind move through the body that way, it links the sati one after another together, so that over the course of 15 or 20 minutes, as the student is scanning the body, he can actually keep sati fairly well going for that period of time. So it not only wake up the body, but it also strongly helps to develop the skill of sati, to remember to keep doing this, to keep doing whatever the object is. And so we've also talked quite a lot about the issue of that when the mind wanders away from the breath, that by it wandering away, that's the normal way that the mind works. That's just no ordinary state, that the mind just moves from thought to thought to thought, seemingly without any cause. What we're going to start doing, I guess, is we're going to start looking at not only these random thoughts, but also what causes them. But before I do that, I want to talk about, just to lay things back out, is that when sati comes in, the sati, which is the remembrance, is like the wake up. That is bodhi in a small way, to wake up. And the thing that we wake up to is our right view. And what is the right view here is, oh, I was going to watch my breath, and here the mind is wandering away. So that's the example that I use for everybody, because everybody knows what that is. And so this is what we mean then by experiencing the mind, because now we're able to experience it from the perspective of, is it hindered or is it free from hindrances? And then also step 10 of anapanasati, which is part of the mind, is to gladden the mind. And this helps with right effort considerably. Aha, I've got you. Aha, I feel successful. Aha, I can see the mind wandering away. All right, and when it is wandering away, then that would be the hindrance, which would be the what's called Dhammanupasana, or in the old way of looking at it, air, earth, water, fire, air, the clouds that are in the mind, the contents of the mind, the Dhammanupasana, the things that come to mind. We before didn't have a way of noticing what was worthwhile and what was not worthwhile. But when we begin to attend wisely, what that means is that we're going to start keeping the hindrances at bay and start putting the mind onto things that are worth thinking about. So we think about wholesome things, and we don't think about unwholesome things. And that one of the really wholesome things to think about is, in fact, this process of what we're talking about in regard to the Eightfold Noble Path and the Four Noble Truths. So the Four Noble Truths is really worth paying attention to, but not in the way of mulling it over like you're reviewing to take an exam in college or something on the Four Noble Truths, but instead applying the Four Noble Truths to the situation that's happening right here, right now, in the sense of this is dukkha. I can see it. This is the cause of dukkha. I see it. Okay. And then occasionally those states of, wow, this is really nice to be free from suffering, the third noble truth. And we're already practicing the fourth, and this is the way: right view, right sati, right effort, and right attitude. Okay. But in this system that we're talking about, I have been in generally leaving out one of the key ingredients, and that is vedana. We've talked about body, we've talked about the mind, we've talked about the mind objects, but we don't talk too much about the vedana. And originally I had the idea that doing the vedana correctly required a lot of sati, and therefore it was better for having the students to begin watching the mind and then work with vedana or feelings later when they were sharp. But now I'm changing that based upon stuff that I've gotten from Bhikkhu Buddhadasa recently, and saying, oh no, we need to actually bring all of it together fairly quickly into practice. And primarily the reason for that is it is within vedana that we have the two qualities called sukkha and piti. In fact, in the steps of anapanasati, 1, 2, 3, and 4 is long in-breath and out-breath. Number 2 is shorter in-breath and out-breath in the sense of the body's not moving so much. The third one is experiencing the body. And the fourth one is tranquilizing the body in the sense of bringing the body to peace and at rest. Now, a lot of people think that that's what they've got to do, and so they'll sit in strong determination and other things like that when they haven't gotten their mind really straightened out. And they wind up damaging their body, hurting their knees, giving themselves back pain, doing all kinds of things, going in the direction of tranquilizing the body, where in fact there's more important work to be done, and that it is incorrect to try to practice them as step 1, 2, 3, 4, and then step 5, and then step 6, and maybe a few months later, step 7. But whether we're going to start to integrate all of these things together in the practice. The next point, which is really, really important to understand, is that rapture or piti and sukkha are two of the jhana factors, and that the jhana state, that first jhana, is in fact the sweet spot. That's the place where we are capable of watching the mind, but not emptying the mind. That emptying the mind completely would be the second jhana, but in the first jhana, we're going to take enough control of it so that we decide what's going to be allowed into the mind for thinking and what's not going to be. And what's not going to be allowed into the mind is hindrances. What's not going to be allowed in the mind is past, or things that are problems to be solved, or things that we want. And what is wholesome and worthwhile thinking about? And that is what's happening with the body right now, what's happening with the feelings right now, what's going on right now. So now we begin to get that, oh yeah, the past and the future are inappropriate. But being in the here now and being with the Dhamma, that's what's appropriate. So that's what we need to do to once we're in this state. But the question is, well, how do we get into it? The answer is with the jhana factors are collected together. We have to develop these things as skills. And so step 5 then of anapanasati is to train the mind for rapture, or piti is the Pali word for it. And to be honest with you, rapture is not a good translation into the English. In fact, the word rapture is so infrequently used that it's not a commonly used word, and therefore it doesn't have a commonly understood definition. And in fact, the Christians have gotten it and just twisted it all around to their own liking. And so now we're not even sure what the word rapture actually should mean if we're going to use that to translate the word pity. So, what is a good word in English that we can use? The answer is, well, right now I don't even know one. We could use words that dance around it. One of the words would be thrill. Another one would be the feeling of being a champion. That in fact, piti is basically the major goal in life for everyone, except that in mostly the people are looking for that feeling of rapture or piti based upon sensual desires. In other words, the outside world. They think that they're going to get this from the outside world. And so people will do all kinds of things, like train for sports, to do the Olympics. Why would anyone want to go to the Olympics? Or not as an observer or part of the crowd, but why should someone want to train and join the Olympics and then go to the Olympics and compete? Why would someone do that? Think about it.
To get that high.
Yes, exactly. Why do people sit in front of slot machines and put that coin in one after another? The whole bucket of coins is just going one after another after another. Why do they play the slots?
Yeah, to get the high of winning. Yeah.
To get that high, to get the win. Another example is the real estate agent. She's been working on this contract for months now, and finally she's got both the seller and the buyer's signature on the contract, and she gets that win, that, I got it, all right? This is the quality that is missing in Western meditation, is this quality of developing this sense of winning, this sense of championship, this sense of, I got it. And yet that's what everybody is looking for. And so people go to the Olympics. In fact, the 100-yard dash, the first time the guy won he was probably in high school. And so when he won that race, he felt so good that put him on the road now, that's what I want in life. I want to run so that I can feel the way that I felt when I won that race that one time. And so he continues to run, he continues to race, he continues up until the Olympics. But now it takes the Olympics win to get the same quality of feeling that he had in high school the first race he won. You can't just go back and compete against high school students over and over and over again. It doesn't get the thrill from that, okay? The same thing happens with people who get really wealthy. They'll get a windfall, they'll get a big amount of money somehow, and then they feel really good about it, that they feel secure with that money. But then that feeling, that high, that win goes away, and the insecurities come back again, and they think, oh, if I can go pull another stunt like I did to get that kind of money, I'll feel that way again. And then you wind up seeing people amassing huge fortunes, but they are missing out on the very quality that they wanted when they went to do all the dirty work that they did to get all of that money. You see, it's that high, that win, that feeling of being on top of the world, the champion. This is what we mean by piti. So when we translate it into English as the word joy, we almost completely destroy the quality that we're looking for. Because the joy is that your husband comes home and you see him and you smile, well, I'm happy you're home. That's like at the 1% level of what we're going to be doing. But the point is very difficult for many students to understand is that this is to be developed. This is a skill. And so we need to start paying attention to it, and that feeling happens with that gladdening of the mind. The gladdening of the mind is like, aha, I caught you. changing that frame of reference from, oh no, this is hard work, oh, this meditation stuff, oh, I'm not sure I'm doing it right, and the wonder, the monkey mind. So you see, that's the loser's attitude. But when we take on that winner's attitude with right effort, that's step 10 of anapanasati, to gladden the mind. When we do it correctly, that gives us that real feeling of, aha, I did catch you, I got you. All right. Now, here's one of the things that will help students go in that direction is, first off, you have probably heard many things about, over the centuries, what high respect humanity in general has paid to the Buddha. That the more anyone learns about the system and the Buddha himself, the more impressed they become. The whole concept of enlightenment is either one of two things. Either it's a magical state that's way up there and it's really unattainable, or enlightenment is something that can be had by a human being, but it's really top-notch, first quality, high-class human being. This is the quality of being noble, the quality of being unified, of having a unified mind, comes from the quality of success. And that what we are successful at in this regard, every time that you see the mind wandering away from the breath, and you go through this sequence in anapanasati, you are in fact doing the very best thing that you could possibly do for yourself, giving yourself the very best results that you could possibly ever have. And you're training for that, and so you need to keep track of it, that, oh wow, I can do this. No matter how obstructed the mind is, I can do this. So that gives us a state of being satisfied. But the important point here is the quality of success. Now, piti is a jhana factor, and sukkha is a jhana factor. And these are the two jhana factors that students are missing most. And so they don't know whether they're in jhana or not. Oh, they had a really peaceful moment and things like that. But when they really understand that, number one, there is a state of mind that Bhikkhu Buddhadasa calls fit for work. And there is a state of mind that the Buddha talks about that's got these particular factors to them. And those factors are, number one, the mind is free from hindrance. Number two, he has rapture and sukkha, piti and sukkha, that are jhana factors. So he develops those things. And that it's actually stated in the sutras like this, and a lot of people miss it, that the piti and the sukkha, that sense of winning, that sense of accomplishment, that sense of success, and then from that, right after that runner, for instance, when he finishes the race, what does he do? The second after the race is over, after he wins, the first thing he does is he puts his arms in the air, yay! And then the second thing, what does he do?
Plans the next race.
Well, he rests, he relaxes. Why does he do that? Because the job is finished. The war is won. The race is won. All right, so this now is the quality from the win of the rapture or the piti, is the sukkha, which is the relaxation, which is the satisfaction that comes from having the success of the win. And that we want to put these two things into our practice so that we have a complete feeling of success followed by a complete feeling of satisfaction. And by having this success, this real high, oh, this is so nice, that in fact the rapture is what allows the student to go, when the piti is, or excuse me, when the sukkha is very strong, it will take them right into nibbana. as Bhikkhu Buddhadasa talks about it, a little Dhammana moment. Doesn't last for long. It's not a permanent kind of thing, but wow, is it nice while it's there. And while it is there, that's when we can also experience and know that we're experiencing, and notice and note that we're experiencing now the third noble truth, that this is really nice. I'm really actually free from suffering. And this is the state that happens then in step 6 of anapanasati. This state is called sukkha. Now, one of the things that a lot of people don't know is they've heard about dukkha forever. Anybody who learns anything about Buddhism, the first word they hear about it is dukkha, 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 dukkha. But they don't know the word sukha. And yet in the Thai language, sukha is a very, very common word. It's actually, a lot of the Pali has come right into the common usage in the Thai language. And so the Thais, they automatically know what that is. But the Westerners also, they don't understand sukha is the satisfaction that we get through accomplishment. And in this case, what we're accomplishing is the very best thing that humans can accomplish, and that is cleaning out the mind and getting it fit for use in the world, so that we become, in momentary points in time, very, very high quality human beings. Because we come into this state that the Buddha calls first jhana, or that the Bhikkhu Buddhadasa calls fit for work. But it requires this acceleration. Now, as you practice it, it will take on various qualities. And eventually it will feel, I have to say it, the piti moves into sukha very quickly. But in the beginning, we want to actually take a moment to make sure that this gladdening of the mind does, in fact, bring on that feeling of the win, the success. And as you know, we've talked about it before, that the teachings of the Buddha are good in the beginning, good in the middle, and good in the end. And what we're talking about today is what it makes it so good. To start practicing on how good can you feel, how successful and satisfied and safe and comfortable can you feel, because these are actually skills to be developed. This is a skill to be developed. What is that skill? The skill of being the lion. The skill of success then promotes that right attitude of being the lion, being the king, being the in fact I'm working with an elderly gentleman who is ethnic Chinese. He's Willy's dad. They live in New York, and that the word that we've come with Willy and his dad and I actually is Willy's idea, but his dad really likes it. And that is the word emperor, because they're Chinese, you know. All right. So you can think of it for yourself as you're the czar. You are Caesar, or that way. So he sees it, yeah, he's the emperor. He can master this stuff. He can come out of his fear. And that's the attitude that we want to have is, yeah, I can get this done. Yeah, we can do this. I'm the emperor here. I'm the czar. I can do what I want to do, and I am capable of doing that. So that's the quality that we were looking for, that I was missing out until I understood what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa was getting at. And that is that we take this whole quality that humanity has in society of looking for something on the outside world that gives us success. The real estate agent, there's a moment when she knows she's done it. There's a time when it's time for the scientist to publish the paper. And he gets that big thrill, here it goes, I'm publishing, you know, or whatever like that. There is a point in time when people, they want that point in time to happen, because that's the point in time when they really give themselves permission to feel the way that they actually want to feel. On top of the world is another word to use. And so this is the kind of quality that you want to manufacture. It's a skill to be developed. It's a more than a can-do attitude. It's an attitude with a belly laugh. I can do this. And so that's the pep talk. The pep talk is that you're the czar. You are absolutely the king of your mind. And your mind is the only thing that you ever knew about the world. Why is that? Because the real outside world has to be processed with the mind in order to come up with an internal representation. What we call realizing. People say, I realized something yesterday, or, oh, I realized what you're talking about. Humans cannot realize anything. If I see that tree and realize it's a tree, does that mean that I've now got a tree growing out of my brain? No, that's not what we mean by realize. What we're actually talking about is mentalizing. But that mentalizing is actually the internal consciousness. And in that regard, we come to deal with our own internal representation of the outside world, and we don't deal with the outside world directly. We deal with an internal representation of it, right? And that internal representation of it has its own database, its own memory systems. And so what we do is we will process data out of the past in order to perceive or understand what we're seeing in the present moment. What that means is that human beings, by their nature, mix their own past memories with the data that's coming in the present moment to understand what's happening in the present moment, and that the more old data they add, the further away their internal representation is going to be from the outside world. And we can also kind of understand that the closer that our perception, the closer our understanding is to the actual outside world, the less suffering there's going to be. And that the further we are away from the outside world, then the more likely there is going to be suffering. Furthermore, the deeper in the past that we dig to get our data, the more likely it's going to be wrong, and therefore is going to be more subject to suffering. An example of that, in fact, a major important one is that people do not feel new things. People feel what they're in the habit of feeling. That's amazing. Which means that the old feeling system flavors the current moment so that we feel in this present moment old ways. So if a child, for instance, is very afraid of something, then that fear and the feelings of that fear, never mind what the something was, it's the feelings that remain, so that the child will then grow up and have fear in their life. And so they'll do all kinds of things like get a good job or get a lot of money or get a nice house and all of that kind of stuff, because they think that they've been lied to, but they think that material possessions will help them feel better about themselves. But we've learned, oh no, if you want to feel better about yourself, you're going to have to do that all by yourself. You cannot go win some race or gain some big, huge pot of money or whatever like that, because the acceleration, the high, doesn't last very long. Well, that's true in piti also. We want it to not last very long. We want it to go bang, and then come back down to this really beautiful state of sukkha. And that state of sukkha has the quality, most importantly, of satisfaction. That this is good. This one, I like it. And so the quality then of that sukkha is that we want to maintain this state of mind. We like this state, this first jhana, and we want to maintain it. And we want to make sure that there is nothing that's going to take us away from that secure, happy sukkha state that's built upon the success that we've just had. So we want to maintain that, which means that now we're going to be on guard with the thoughts to make sure that the thoughts are going to be either wholesome or non-wholesome. Wholesome thoughts are going to help us to inspect, investigate, and deepen this state. Unwholesome thoughts are going to pull us out of this state. So, in fact, if you look at it from that perspective, the teaching now of anapanasati has directly developed right into the practice of anapanasati the teachings of paticca samuppada. That in fact, you'll never get paticca samuppada without anapanasati. And if you're doing anapanasati correctly, it helps you to completely understand the mind. It is. And in this way, anapanasati and paticca samuppada and the Four Noble Truths all fit together in one neat package. And yet for many students, when they come to Buddhism, they say, oh, wow, there's 6 of those, and 10 of those, and 16 of them things, and 12 of that, and 5 of those, and 4 of those, and 4 more of those things, and what the heck, oh, another 5 of that, you see, and the people get confused. But even that system is codified to help the students because most of the things that most religions teach, they teach it, but in a haphazard kind of way. And so at least the Buddhist stuff is codified, sort of like putting happiness and satisfaction and success and a sense of security and a sense of wealth, putting that group together and calling it Iddhiyapada. That's Iddhiyapada, and that Iddhiyapada is what is to be developed with anapanasati. So now you can see that all of those various ways of groupings and collections are only so that we can take the whole thing and put it together. It's almost like having a house, and we're going to build a house, and there's 2 ways to do it. One is to get just raw lumber, and so now you've got a whole yard full of raw lumber and maybe some notes about what I think that I might want to do with all this raw lumber. That's how most religions come. But Buddhism already comes sort of prefabricated in the sense that here's a toilet. We've got all the toilet stuff there. Here's a bedroom. Okay, and now our job is to merely take those big items and pop them together to recognize, oh, they fit together in this one package that is the entire teachings of the Buddha. And that one package then can be, like we would think of it as the word home. When you hear the word home, then you have a complete understanding of what that word means in the sense of the dwelling, the furnishings, the feelings you have from there, and then you can generalize that. Well, that's what we do when we hear the teachings of the Buddha in the sense of dukkha, nirodha. Is that one phrase, like the word home, is jammed packed. But it is only jam-packed with one thing, and that is the teachings of the Buddha, suffering and how to get out of it. And how to get out of it requires skill because the old habits are strong. And so naturally what will happen is that when we need the good advice from the Dhamma, or we need the good advice, I mean, we can get good advice everywhere. Even accountants have good advice from time to time. The problem is that people don't take the advice when they need it most. Why is that? Because of pressure or because of the situation. This is why sati is so important, is so we can remember and remember and remember to do the right thing. The Pali word for that, by the way, is satipanya, to remember to be wise. To remember to be wise, satipanya. And that's basically what the whole teaching of the Buddha is. It's just satipanya. My favorite, by the way, is don't worry, be happy. That's the entire teaching of the Buddha. Don't worry means come out of the hindrances. Be happy. If we could only do that. I mean, how many millions of people have heard that song by either Bobby McFay or the Rastafarian version of it? People hear the song, but they don't become happy. Why is that? Because when they need happiness the most, they don't remember to do it. So now you remember that you're the czars. You're the emperor. You are the one who is in charge of this mess that you call your world. And you need to have that feeling of exalted. I can do this. I am champion of this internal world. I can manage this stuff. And it gives us great joy and satisfaction. Great joy and satisfaction. That's great joy is the piti, and the satisfaction is the sukkha. And those two things need to be developed and then maintained. Sure.
So I get satisfaction and I get the feeling, oh, this is nice, but I don't really get like really high great joy before or after. It's kind of mellow. It's not as...
Yes. Start working for the mellow becoming a little bit, how to say it, sharp.
And how do we do that?
Well,
like it's very enjoyable.
How they do that with cheese is by aging it. I use the word mellow and then the word sharp because those are terms that are used about cheese. Okay. So how does cheese go from mellow to sharp? Well, it ages. Okay, so that's what you need to do is to age that mellowness, but the aging process really has to do with making sure that you really do get that hit of success. Yeah. That aha, I caught you. That actually is step 10, but it's also step 6. They're married together. The mind, that's the thing that's really hard for us to understand is that the mind is both unified and divided. And that it's the division of the mind is basically the old stuff that we carry in the anterior cortex that gives rise to the feelings of self-preservation, the feelings of fear, the feelings of anxiety, the feelings of tension, the feelings of we got to do something. If we don't, we won't survive. That I got to save my life. All right, those are all of the old feelings that were built in, and those kind of feelings and that kind of mental system kept the snakes alive and the alligators alive 100 million years ago. It kept the wolves alive 10 million years ago. It kept the monkeys alive 5 million years ago, and it's been keeping humans alive ever long we've been here. Some say, here's a very interesting point about that. Fire. When did humans get fire? Because once they get fire, then they can eat cooked food and they can get the energy and the effort they need out of the cooked food so that their brain will grow. But making fire is extremely difficult. It takes a big brain to figure out how to make fire. So which came first, the fire or the big brain? And that's a conundrum they don't know how to work out. Me, I don't really care. I wasn't there then. I do know that we have both now, both the fire and the big brain. And that we get burned by both of them. And so that history is coming out of our deep past that winds up having us feeling bad and keeping us in a state of victimhood, that we start out as victims when we're little kids. Everybody's bigger than we are. They put our clothes on us, they feed us, they slap us around, they tell us what to do. And we get that kind of opinion about the world when we're little kids, and many people don't change that opinion their whole life. They stay the victim. But now you're getting the opportunity, oh no, you're not the victim, you're the champion. But you're going to have to train at it. The training. Aha. So that point in time when you get that aha reaction, the insight, let that really, really be powerful, useful, feel good. Make sure that you feel like that you are successful, that you're the czar, you're the emperor of your own mind, and that you can feel that power, that win, that success, but it needs to be cultivated. Now, here's something very funny, and that is that every student that I've told this to have exactly the same attitude about it that you do, and that is, well, I'm not sure. And there's basically, that's the doubt. The doubt needs to be eradicated. There's two kinds of doubts, you know. The first doubt, which most people have and never get over, is the doubt that can be expressed in the question, whose fault is this anyway? Who did this mess? Who can I get to clean up this mess? Is there some kind of God out there that I can blame for this mess? Or a devil? Or the government? Or religion? Or whatever like that? Well, the second noble truth, when we come to understand that, that's what teaches us, oh no, suffering does not come from the outside. We are not victims to suffering that's coming from the outside. We are the manufacturers of that suffering that we make ourselves suffer. In short, we are responsible. Once you have that second noble truth, that first kind of doubt is no longer useful. We come to understand the Margaritaville song. Have I ever told you that song?
My husband talks about it all the time.
Some people say there's a woman to blame, but I know it's my own damn fault.
Oh,
that's
yeah, that part.
That's the part. It's my own fault. Everything is my own fault. We are 100% responsible for everything that happens. And that if we think that, oh no, we are not responsible for everything that happens, that means that we think that something else is responsible for the suffering. But once we own it, now we know that we can jump on top of it, we can pound it into the ground, we can play with it as we please because we're the emperor now. If I'm responsible for my suffering, that means that I'm also in charge of it, and it is something to be dealt with in the way that an emperor would deal with it. A winner.
You know, it's not so that I have doubt. I'm just trying to find a way of looking at it that would kind of spice it up for me. Because
what's the best thing that ever happened to you?
The best thing? Probably like swimming with whales or stuff like.
That's amazing. Okay, all right. You've actually been swimming with whales.
They were close by, yeah.
How did you feel?
Magical.
Okay.
I know you don't like that word.
How about exhilarated?
Sure.
All right. As what we're talking about now, it's really hard to find a correct word for this.
The thing is, I've been doing this meditation thing for so long, coming back from thinking it's not a big deal for me now, like, you know, what
it is, so that's the whole point. We have to get that point.
Okay,
is no, this is a big deal. This is your whole life. This is like swimming with the whales. This is like winning the Olympic championship for the 100-meter dash.
Yeah, so I'm trying to find a way that will like excite me about that part.
Now, there's some questions about that people have, in the sense that there is a kind of thrill that we have, or exhilaration, before we know that we've got the win. That's what keeps the runner running very strongly. Another example would be there is a whole group of people, in fact, by the hundreds, they even know each other. And what they do is they move around from one amusement park to the next in the United States with the intention of riding the roller coaster. And they become kind of champions at riding roller coasters. And everyone who is a roller coaster junkie is looking for that thrill. Now, the thrill of the ride is happening when, in other words, when it goes up and then over, and that loss of gravity, that sense of weightlessness, that sense of exhilaration, that is the feeling that they get. But there's also the feeling, as the roller coaster is now finally coming into the terminal, that's when they start to have the real joy of the satisfaction of I did it, and also the relaxation that happens at that point. All right. So, like I said, this is something that needs to be thought about, considered. Remember what it's like. What was the best things that ever happened to you? I remember, for instance, one of them that was a really big deal for me is when the first time it happened was when I won the first chair all-state band. The very best tuba player in the state of South Carolina, certified. Now you think about it, that was nothing. I mean, that no big deal there, but it was for me. That was the win. That was such an amazing exhilaration. I think it actually changed my life from being a miserable loser toady to be someone who feels successful about his life. So this is what we're talking about then. Some high that you've had. Swimming with whales, I recommend that one. That's a really excellent one. So remember that feeling that you had with the being out there with the whales. Because very few people have ever done that. So this is the kind of thing that you're looking for. You're looking for the highest quality of success, and allow yourself to have that feeling. Because that's the jhana factor. That's that zippity-doo-dah. That's the ha-ha! In fact, I said that there is actually no word in the English language for it, but there is a sound. And that sound is ah!
Yeah.
All right, and so when it's developed, so this is something that you can do. Now, we talked about the first quality of the doubt. The second quality of doubt, the major one, is, okay, now I recognize that it is in fact my fault and it is my responsibility. The second kind of doubt is, am I up to the task? Can I do this? And when you come to the conclusion, yes, I can. Yes, I can follow the path of the Buddha. That's an extraordinary win. To know that you can do this, to know it can be done, to know that you're swimming with the whales. That's that feeling. And another way of talking about it, this is the peak of humanity. This is the place where this is the station that you would consider the highest point that a human being can reach. The state of nobility, the state of integration, the state of no conflicts of interest, the state of satisfaction based upon success and security. So we're actually then developing not only just jhana factors, but we're actually developing the powers. The power. Success is a power. Satisfaction is a power. And they need to be developed. Let yourself feel very, very good with every breath that you remember. Yeah, I can do this. And let yourself have that really, really good hit of good feelings. Let yourself feel on top of the world. There's so many words that we can use that only point towards this. But it may not actually be exactly the same thing for everyone. But we do know that it has the quality of it's a high. It's a top position. It's the kind of thing that we remember. That feeling of the win, that feeling of success. That's, by the way, one of the main reasons why they have a really, really big, huge slot machine at the front door of the casino with a really, really big number. All right. They want people to, when they walk into the casino and they see that huge slot machine, they want them to get that feeling of exhilaration immediately as they go in, because then they'll go after that exhilaration. They'll keep pulling that slot machine, putting the money in, making the casino rich, while the people are not feeling as good as they want to, as often as they want to. But they know how they want to feel. So that's something that you've got to first off figure out. What is it that you want to feel? What's the very, very best that you can feel? And then do that. Practice it. This is what the Buddha means by piti. And I have known that for many, many years, but after reading Bhikkhu Buddha Dasa's book that has never been published, I say, oh, yes, okay, yes, that's why this is. And the important point that most people misunderstand is that this is a skill to be developed. One note on the piano does not make a concerto. So it's not going to happen the very first time. You keep practicing, keep practicing, keep practicing with the intention of, this is the very best I can be right now. This is it. This is my high point. This is good enough. This is so good. And so you keep practicing like that. How can you give yourself those highs? And this is all built right into anapanasati. Now there's more to it. And that more to it, we can talk perhaps at a later time, but I'll give you more, and that is that state of sukkha, where we come to the high, rapture, piti, and then come down to this state of sukkha, we want to maintain that state. And we do it by being on guard. This is what we mean by guard the mind. But it's best to be done from this state of complete satisfaction. So now you're guarding the mind so that you can stay in this state because you like it. It's a good state to be in, this first jhana, because we're free, and it is a pleasure that's born from the freedom from the hindrances. Therefore, we can maintain this by making sure that the hindrances don't get a chance to come back in. So we begin to watch our thoughts very carefully while we're in this state of satisfaction, making sure that the thoughts are good, wholesome thoughts, thoughts about the path, thoughts about the teachings of the Buddha, thoughts about this moment, thoughts about how you feel right now, but not how you felt before. We use that only as a way to bring the piti up, but now it's in the here now. And so by that time that sukkha comes in, we're going to guard the mind to make sure that it doesn't come up with unwholesome thoughts. Now, eventually, we start looking at it also to make sure that unwholesome feelings do not arise. Feelings of not liking, feelings of I don't like this, feelings of fear, feelings of anxiety. And guess what? When you're in that state of sukkha, this first jhana that we're talking about, that stuff will come up. It will. It's doing it all the time, and you're not watching it. Now that you're now that you're on the catbird seat, now that you're watching from this state of complete satisfaction, you'll say, "Oh no, I don't want you in here. This is too good to let you in." You become kind of the bar bouncer, and you don't let people in that don't belong inside your palace. So this is the way. Now, the way that I'm telling you now is exactly the way that have been telling you all along, but just adding this one little extra factor in it, or actually two. That's the rapture and the sukkha. The really big high that we have, that feel good, and is always accompanied with an in-breath. And then the sukkha is the relaxed out breath, the sigh, the satisfaction. So that runner is going to have both of those. The first one is the exhilaration of the high. I've won the race, and now I can relax. The relaxation is the key. The job is done. The war is won. The fight is over. Everything that needed to be done has been done, and now we can sit in this state of satisfaction.
So this high you're talking about, what is it on the scale from 1 to 10?
Today 1, tomorrow 1.5, 3 days from now a 2. A couple of weeks later, you call me back and say 5.
Okay, that's doable, because I'm having doubt about getting to 10.
That's the ordinary mind. That's the mind of wanting to get from here to way over there. And all I'm asking you is, no, just take it one step in that direction. Just one step in that direction. Every time you remember to take a step in that direction.
That's helpful.
Take a step in that direction. You don't have to reach the goal. All you have to do is mindfully take one more step in the direction of joy, satisfaction, success.
Yeah, I do have confidence now, because you know what happened? Remember how I thought it was almost impossible to remember when you get up from the chair? Now I cannot not think about when I get up from the chair. But that's at work, because it's more like, routine there.
But that's it right there. You just went right into that success that I'm talking about. You just did it. I saw you.
Yeah. No. At first I thought I would never, I would always be forgetting. But now, every time I get up, I'm like, it's paying attention.
Yeah, so give yourself that success at that moment too. Yes, I can remember this. Yes, I can do this. That's the quality that we're looking for. See, 5 minutes ago you were confused about it, and now you're actually doing it.
Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. So now you know what we're talking about, the success. I can do this. And you said it in the way that in the beginning, and I told you it was going to be like that. This stuff is hard to remember in the beginning, but after a week or two, you can get pretty good at it. And as you get pretty good at it, you feel successful at being able to do this thing that wasn't really that hard to do, but in the beginning, it felt like it was impossible. And that's where most of humanity is to think that these high states that we're talking about are impossible. Oh no, humanity has been grasping and clinging and struggling after these sensations and feelings their whole lives. So civilizations are built on people wanting this feeling of success. And you already know what it's like. Now you've got 2 examples. One is you can swim with whales, and number 2, you can remember to stand when you get up out of a chair. Wow, what a transformation has come over you in this talk.
No, this is really helpful. because that was a point that the whole jhana thing was just confusing and kind of, I felt like maybe it's not for me, you know.
Well, that's only because it's not really clearly spelled out as exactly what this sukkha and piti are as jhana factors. But when Bhikkhu Buddhadasa described it the way that he did when he was talking about Vedana, I said, oh, that's what I need to start teaching the students. Right, that's it. They're missing that win, that exhilaration. They do it with the aha, I've got you, but that's only just like, that's like pulling the trigger. The rapture is the actual gun going off, the bullet being fired, the explosion. Okay. So, aha, I got you is like the trigger, and that should be triggering the, just like you said, I can remember it now. We're looking for that success. And I want you to understand that it's okay for you to feel at the very highest possible quality of success because you are becoming successful at the highest quality thing that a human being can do. This is taking you to the peak of what you're capable of. And all you have to do is remember that you are that.
Yeah.
There's a Christian saying, thou art that, or you are God. That's a bit much for people. Emperor, we'll keep emperor. Tsar, I like czar too. King, that doesn't make so much. That word's been too watered down. But this is what we mean by that quality of noble. The noble is the one who is completely successful. And because he's successful, he's satisfied and secure. And so this is what we mean by the noble Dhamma. The noble Dhamma is that which takes us to that noble place that's based upon success, security, and mostly satisfaction. But the satisfaction grows deepest when it's immediately preceded by success, a win. For instance, at the end of a fight, regardless of whatever kind of fight it is, even a word fight, the loser and the winner both feel like they're glad that it's over. They both get the relief, but it's the winner whose relief, his glad it's over, is a different kind of feeling than the glad it's over because I've lost the fight. I'm a loser, but I'm glad it's over. No, this is I'm glad it's over, but it's because I've won. I've done the job. The job is completed now. If we lose the fight, then we have the automatic, oh, well, I can rest for a minute, but I got to get up and fight again. But if we do the right way, then the fight is over because we've won. So this is the point that I'm trying to allow the students to understand is how good can you feel? And whatever has it been your whole life that you've been doing in order to feel as good as you can feel, now is actually built in as part of anapanasati. And that all of the components are there, including the fact that in the beginning, just like the example of getting out of the chair, in the beginning there was failure, but by practicing it more and more, now it's becoming successful. And you know you can do it, and it builds the confidence. As that confidence builds, so will the feeling of being a winner. So that rapture will grow and peak. And then after a while of getting great benefit out of that, then the piti, the high point, doesn't have to be quite as high as it used to bring you into that really deep level of sukkha, that level of complete satisfaction. So in the beginning, failure. In the unless we stop failing and start feeling like a success, and then the success feels really big. But later it becomes kind of, oh yeah, I know, I've been there before, been there, done that. This is really nice, yes, but it does not have that exhilaration quality to it. Because it's well developed. So it's a habit to be developed, a new habit, a new skill of being completely successful at a feeling level and completely satisfied. These are jhana factors. And it makes the mind really fit for work. And what is it fit for work? Is to make sure that only wholesome thoughts are going to be allowed into the mind and unwholesome thoughts. Well, you see, that also begins to create a new pattern. That creates a new habit. So that eventually the old thoughts will not be there anymore and the old anxieties will not be there, because every time that they come up, we chase them away happily.
True. I wonder though, we're looking at this so methodically. What about people who become awakened or noble without this Buddhist system? Like, do they just jump levels all of a sudden?
It is a natural thing. It's like a light switch. There very, very little actually needs to be done. That what we have done with anapanasati is actually taken the light switch apart to see all of the various components of how light switches operate. But the real issue is just merely a change of attitude from the attitude of a loser to the attitude of a champion. That's the only thing, and it happens. A very good example of that was Eckhart Tolle. And he talks about that in the beginning he was so miserable that he had to do something about it. And when I heard that, I recollected, yeah, that's what got me to India. I was hurting and I knew it. And I had to do something about it. But then upon reflection, I said, wait a minute, that suffering and misery and the knowledge that I could come out of it was there for almost every decision that I made. Why did I go into psychology? That was it. Why did I get into Hinduism and Muktananda? That was it. Why did I go to India? That was it. Why did I eventually go to Bhikkhu Buddhadasa's? Because I was still searching for that. How can I get out of life suffering and misery? And so everyone knows that's there. Everyone is, let us say, poisoned by the same poison, and that it would be society. Or the other way of saying it would be that everybody has the same disease. It's a communicable disease. It's what Bhikkhu Buddhadasa calls the spiritual disease, to make sure that we don't talk about it in the sense of a mental disease like schizophrenia or concussions or whatever like that with physical damage. But we actually are talking about a mental issue, a mental disease. And the mental disease is we're all losers. Even the guy who wins the game of Monopoly, everybody who's playing the Monopoly game is a loser. It doesn't matter whether you get the little car or the little cannon or the jacks or whatever it is that you're going to have as your piece, your avatar on that board. Everybody who plays the game is a loser. And everybody wants to win the game so that they can feel good about themselves and come out of that loser position so that they can feel good about themselves. Well, that's what this practice is really all about. It's a very simple thing. And Eckhart Tolle, when he did that for himself, he says, to hell with this feeling bad. I'm going to sit here on this bench here in London for the next couple of years. He didn't think it in advance, but he just literally sat there enjoying the fact that he was free now. nothing to do and no place to go. I feel really good. And and then when it was time for him to start teaching, he came up with, duh, I don't know. And that's when he became interested in Buddhism, and by doing so, he began to take the light switch that he'd already flicked on, and he took it apart to find out what was going on with that. But it really is so basic. It really is nothing but a change of attitude based upon a change of view. And the skills that we need to maintain that. Because of the old baggage, it's almost like an example would be a spring-loaded switch. And that it's spring-loaded with a timer so that you turn the light on, and then sometimes later on, it seems magical or something like that, but it turns itself back off again. And we're back into darkness, we're back into suffering. And the normal thing is, oh me, oh this is too bad, oh I don't like this and whatnot. And we forget that all we have to do is just go turn the switch on. And when we remember to turn the switch on, then we go turn the switch on. And then later on, the switch goes back and we're back into darkness. Such is the nature of the mind. So yes, it really is so simple. All it is a matter of turning on a switch that lights up the brain or lights up the mind into a state of happiness. And it is really simple to do. But it requires a skill. And that skill is, never mind how many times it gets dark, push that switch again. One of the analogies I used was it's interesting, Willy's calling again.
Uh-oh.
I don't think that you two have shared a call. Can I bring him in on the call?
He probably has like personal things to tell you, so.
No, he's okay. We record. That's not a problem. But you haven't met each other yet, I don't think.
Yeah, you can disconnect me whenever you want to switch to his, topic.
Okay. Well, you guys can come on and get off when you want to. I'm going to add Willy if you don't mind.
Well, we can also wrap up, too. Hi.
Oh, there's Willy. Willy, I wanted you two to meet because you're both in New York. This is Natalie.
Oh, hi, Natalie. I'm Willy. Nice to meet you.
I enjoy your videos a lot. I know all about your family.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Cool. All right. So I guess I don't have to introduce myself.
Yes, no, I know all about you.
Well, there's been a few things we recorded that didn't get recorded, but never mind. Yeah.
Yeah, there's like a bunch of stuff recorded. Gotcha.
Well, Natalie, we have, and Willy's already heard this talk about piti, rapture.
Mm-hmm.
And he uses the word emperor. You could use the word czar or czaress to become the champion of your own life.
Yes.
Got
it. How's that practice going for you, Willy?
Oh, it's going. It's going. I think a little later, I think I need to discuss how to wrap up the end game of the chess game we were talking about. Yes, I've been checkmated, so I need to finish up the game and pick up my pieces.
Yes, Willy and I were referring to that. I gave him some information about a book I read in high school on how to play chess. And the name of the book was The 8 Bad Moves of Chess.
Right.
And the two that I remember the best out of that, one is don't bring your power out in chess. Don't bring the queen out too early.
Yeah.
Let the queen, the most powerful piece on the board, you keep that because you're going to need it later.
Yeah.
And so I use that a lot with my teaching of not trying to, and because it really is, I want to teach you everything all at one time, and it can't be done. Sometimes we have to save the best for last.
Right.
So don't, and they do that in show business, by the way.
True.
In the sense of you've got several pieces of music, the finale should be the high point. Your best piece is the last piece you play.
Mhm.
You don't start out with your winner. You don't start out with your best thing.
You're saying you haven't taught me everything yet?
No, of course not. You ain't seen nothing yet.
Sounds good.
But the other one, which was the one that he and I were talking about most importantly, is do not underestimate the value of your opponents. Do not underestimate the value of the opponent in the sense of you've got to look at what's going on. You've got to watch the other people. That we think we know what other people are doing, but in fact we get selfish. We think about what we want, and we bring them into our picture.
Right.
But in chess is, oh no, you cannot make moves on your chessboard without figuring out what your opponent's up to. Because he's playing this game of chess also, and he's got his own ideas and his own moves, and so we've got to keep track of what the guy is doing. And so this is a way of looking at right view, noble right view. This is compassion. Even if it's in a competition, we still have to look at what the opponent is doing or what our other people around us are doing, begin to get to know them through inspection. And that we already are developing those skills for our own mind. So now we begin to apply those same skills to begin to watch other people. And in doing so, the Buddha calls this, by the way, the skill of knowing the comings and goings of beings. Now, when he says that comings and goings of beings, the magical Buddhists, they think that all he's talking about, that he can see the past lives of other people.
I see.
That's not what this means. The comings and goings, if you have to understand the word being here, being in this sense, the verb to be, is a temporary thing. So Willy, for instance, he's being something right now, and later he will do something else. It means he's being something else at that time.
Mm-hmm.
For instance, now he's being a drinker. Now he's being a swallower.
Uh-huh.
All right, so the comings and goings of beings mean that we're actually watching people as they go in and out of their states of suffering. As we can see people as the self arises in other people, because we can see it as it arises in ourselves, because we're on guard for that.
Okay.
That's that state of sukkha, where we're sitting there in first jhana, where everything is really nice and we do not want to disturb that. What's going to disturb it is that selfishness, those thoughts of the past, etc., like that, and that you can actually begin to see that in other people. Because you can see it in yourself. Psychologists, by the way, are trained for that kind of stuff. Unfortunately, they're trained to watch other people instead of trained to watch their own self. So they wind up being able to fix other people's flat tires, but they can't fix their own flat tire.
Oh, ironic. Uh-huh.
And so watching people's hands, watching people's facial gestures, watching people's frowns or smiles, watching their breathing, that comes as part of that process that comes from that chess story, or that chess book of do not underestimate your opponent. And what we mean by underestimate in chess can be expanded to do not assume things about other people,
Okay.
but watch closely instead.
I see.
So that's what Willy and
yeah. That's like our whole life is based on assumptions or about other people. It's breaking that down. I see how that would be very powerful.
So, I mean, how does this factor into, say, like the fundamental attribution error, right? Because it's like when we watch other people, we commonly think that, you know, they do one action and then we will say, oh, yeah, that's because like his character is like that, when most likely whatever they did, like, for example, like we see somebody, you know, like, I don't know, like a coworker taking our snacks or something, and we'll say like, oh man, like, yeah, see that guy? That guy's like a cheat and a lie. Like he like hates everybody. You know, like we tend to like these cognitive biases. So I guess like when we observe, we have to do it carefully, right? We have to be careful of these potential biases, right, and understand that.
yes, otherwise, right. Otherwise, we'll start to judge other people. We're better than they are because we can see their bad behavior. Without recognizing, oh no, the only reason I know that's bad behavior is because I've seen it in myself.
I see.
Now, basically, Willy, what you almost touched on, but we're going in the direction of, was what we would look at in this, and since we use the word destiny, providence. Destiny means that things are preordained, or that a person's life is bound to go in a certain direction.
Okay. Is it too loud? Do you guys like hear the machine whirring in the background?
No, you're good.
Oh, okay, got it.
Okay. So what happens though is that that's only true if people are bound to continue to do the things that they are already in the habit of doing. If people are bound to behave in the way that they have been behaving and continue to behave that way, then that will set up a life story for them, or a destiny. Eric Berne calls it a life script. And that one of the teachers that I had by the name of Tabby Kaler actually was able to see individual behaviors that could be manifested and seen in people, and also for the psychologists, if they're looking at it, can see that stuff in themselves. And that these things he called drivers, the drivers actually will define the life script or the destiny that a person has. Isn't that amazing? That this whole quality of destiny that has been on the minds of philosophers and religious people for all of these centuries, they've got a point to it. There is something about a destiny, that people are destined. If someone is walking in a certain direction and he is in the habit of walking in that direction, and he continues to walk in that direction, then he will go where that direction leads him. All right, and so that becomes his destiny. What that whole quality of destiny doesn't understand is all he has to do is change his mind. All he has to do is flip that switch. All he has to do is take a left-hand turn, and now he's no longer bound by his destiny. With Tabby Kaler, one of the ones that was quite remarkable was the try-hard driver always leads to a tragic script. In other words, one's life will wind up in failure if you have momentary failures one after another. Now, what I mean by the try hard is that the mental attitude is of a victim who thinks that if he does not perform, he will be even more victimized, but that he cannot perform because he's not up to it. He's got the doubt. And so what he does is he puts on the impression that he's trying hard to do it when he doesn't expect to succeed at all. An example of that would be whenever someone, let us say with a psychologist, the person comes in, the client comes in and says X, Y, and Z, and then the therapist says, well, this is what you do about X, Y, and Z. Are you going to do it? And he'll say, I'll try.
Oh. I see.
I'll try. Okay. This guy is trying to get away. If that psychologist is smart, he will not accept that as an answer.
I see. So it's kind of like half-assing the practice, right?
Expecting failure.
Okay.
And okay, Natalie, in fact, if you think about it, in the very first part of our talk, that was the state that you were in, was a state of unsureness with the kind of thought, well, I'll try this stuff. Kind of expecting yourself to fail in it. This is the reason, and by the way, that I chose that particular example, looking at the destiny. So if we have the idea that, oh, I'll try it, but we don't have full confidence that we can do it, then that means that our trying is actually going to be more of an excuse with that authority. Well, I tried. Look how hard I tried. That's the exact thing that they say is that please have mercy on me for failing. Look how hard I tried to succeed. Look how hard I tried. When we're expecting failure. By the way, that was my string bass. I actually did that, but that was before I'd gotten into psychology. You know, the string bass is possibly one of the most difficult instruments to learn how to play quickly.
Right.
An example, if you already play the oboe, picking up a clarinet is easy. Picking up a flute is easy.
Mm-hmm.
But going from tuba to string bass, that's a chore. Why? Because your fingers will get bloody before you find out where they belong on that fretboard. Or actually, there's no frets on the board. It's physically difficult. And so that's what I wound up practicing, was expecting to not ever learn to play the string bass because it hurt too much.
See. But is there a difference between, so the first thing is, okay, so what if we say, all right, there's one guy who says like, he's expecting failure. So then of course when it fails, he'll say, well, I tried, give me brownie points for trying since I expected failure. But what about the person that says, okay, like this needs to be done, I'll do it, but then it fails, then he says, that's fine, like I tried. Is there a difference like between these two points of view where one is going into it expecting
yes,
and the other is
in one case, yes, exactly. In one case, the failures are educational.
Mm-hmm.
In the other case, the failure is actually a communication between the failee and the authority that gave him the task to do. So one of them has to do with my relationship. In other words, whether I do the task or not is not the important point. The important point is, how do I respond to my teacher knowing that I failed at playing the string bass? Now let's take that as a complete exactly opposite of Edison. That there were many, many people that were competing with Edison, and the important point that they were trying to do is let's make a filament so that we can put an electric field through that filament and have it to light up and give light with electricity without burning out. Mm-hmm. That filament will last and last and last, perhaps a year or two. And there was a great deal of failures because they had to they tried all kinds of things. And one is, in fact, they actually contributed a lot to physics and chemistry by being able to figure out how to do that. The important point in the beginning was that if there's any oxygen anywhere near that filament, when that electricity goes through and that filament heats up, that just invites the oxygen to come eat that filament.
Right.
So they had to figure out that they've got to put a gas in there that is not going to do it. They found out that carbon dioxide doesn't work because the oxygen will come right off of that carbon and go eat that filament. That doesn't work. They eventually settled on argon because argon is an inert gas.
It's also a noble.
But then they have to. Huh?
It's a
noble gas. Why do they call these gases noble? Why is an element called noble?
because it doesn't react, right? It's inert, right?
It doesn't mess with the other crowd. It's reserved. It's aloof. It's apart. It's not part of the crowd, and it will not interact with that crowd. This is one of the reasons why they call it noble, and that's exactly the same reason why we call it the noble Dhamma, is because it brings the mind to a state that's noble, so that it is not, like argon, it does not eat the filament.
I see.
Guys, I think I'm gonna go because gotta walk my puppy.
Oh.
All right. Can you do that nobly?
At 11:30 at night, like you're gonna go downstairs to walk the puppy? Wow. Oh.
It's in New York. It's safe.
Gotcha. Okay.
Thank you so much, Dhammarato.
Okay, Natalie.
Thank you.
I've really enjoyed our talk. It's been great.
Good night.
Excellent.
Good night, Willy. Have a nice day. Bye.
Good night, Zaris. Good night, Zar.
Gotcha.
How do I disconnect? Do you have to turn the video recording off for me?
No. All you have to do is just click the red button that has the end of call. And there you go. All right, she's gone.
Okay. That was great. Yeah, like today. Naturally. And basically, that's the window outside. There's really not much going on here, because right now, I think everybody here is beginning to understand that buying a new house is there's all like the inconvenience of having many possessions, because we're spending so much time moving them.
You're lucky, because you're not moving to Thailand. You're only moving to New Jersey.
So I'm literally talking about borrowed time here, because they have to assemble some IKEA furniture. So I talked to the Zen master. The Zen master is a little busy, so maybe I'll have him check in tomorrow. He's basically out there, assembling furniture. And so I'll have him talk to you tomorrow.
Keep him busy. That's good. If he's busy doing something. You see, when he was working and busy all day, this stuff didn't bother him. It's only after he retires and he's got nothing to do that the old fears and stuff come back up. So number one is to remember that he can change that, but in the process, part of your job is going to help him to stay busy, to stay out of that old bad stuff.
I see.
And one of the things that I should have said yesterday, I thought about it and I didn't get around to it, and that is that if he has thoughts about that new place, that means he should go back over there again. Go meet the people again. Go see the place again. Get familiar with it again. All of the bad feelings he has about it is because it's in his mind. It's not based in reality.
Oh, okay. I see. Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. So I think I'll keep that. I'll probably let him know after our discussion together. So I think probably it's probably a good time for me to transition to basically the chess game that we discovered that we talked about from yesterday. Do you mind if we turn off the recording, because it's not just for my privacy, but for the girls' privacy. I don't want to. Yeah, that's fine.
No problem. All right, we'll sign off now and stop the recording and continue. So good night, folks.
Good night.
All right.